Hey there, Smoke Master D coming at you with another episode of BBQ Buyer's Guide. This time to full-size and three-quarter size direct heat smoker grills. And here I have some chapter times for you. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And here we have a map of the locations of the builders of the smoker grills that are featured in this episode. I like to show this just because shipping often plays a part in how much you pay for a pit, this size and this weight. If you choose a pit builder near you, that might be cheaper. If you're in the same state though, you might have to pay sales tax. So that occasionally zeroes out the advantage. We'll start with Millscale, Metalworks in Lockhart, Texas there. Then Gator Pits of Texas in Houston. Smoke Slinger is in Kaufman, Texas, outside of Dallas. 1904 Pits is in St. Louis, and then Fat Daddy Smoker is in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And lastly, we have TMG Pits in Knoxville, Tennessee. Now on this slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about the parameters of what we'll be exploring today. I'm going to start by pointing out that I've made an episode about pig cookers that I'll link at the top of your screen. The builders in that episode were all on the East Coast of the United States, mostly the Carolinas and Pennsylvania. While the barbecue from there is direct heat, there are some notable differences from what I did in that episode and what's going on here. Those pits tend to be for cooking whole hogs, and they're generally mounted on trailers. Now, they will put casters on if you ask, but it's mostly trailers. It's kind of a whole bigger size just because of that than what we're talking about here. So really, really big pits on the pig cookers. Now, if you go back and watch that episode, you'll see that some are bigger, some are smaller. But what we have here is a little bit different altogether. Another big thing about pig cookers on the East Coast is that they've tended some to be more focused on propane than on charcoal and coal cooking, which is what I focused on that episode because I believe that it is more traditional and imparts better flavor. The grills that we're going to be discussing today are sort of a related branch of barbecue. You may be familiar with Bradley Robinson and Chud's Barbecue, and the Chud Pits, the mini Chud box and the Chud boxes that he makes, he credits to the Texas Hill Country. And you see the Texas Hill Country there on your screen, pictured on that map. The only place I know really for certain that uses direct heat barbecue pits like the ones we're going to discuss is Snow's Barbecue in Lexington, Texas, though there may be more in that region. To make things even more complicated, though, 1904 Pits claim that their direct heat cookers are native to St. Louis and came about from the 1904 World's Fair held there, when a lot of different foods and influences came to the city. And it's entirely possible that barbecue, maybe from the Texas Hill Country, maybe from the Carolinas, who can say, migrated there at that time, or maybe even surrounding areas. The thing about barbecue is that for a large part, American barbecue history is almost all direct heat barbecue everywhere. This whole indirect heat thing is a bit newer, came on a little bit later. Now, what are we actually looking at here today? When I say smoker grills, they feature a generally simple design of a food rack, a good ways above the coals of the fire below, all surrounded by steel. The food is accessed from a door above, and the fire is accessed from the door to the side. I thought my Carolina builders might have something like their pig cookers, but smaller. But everything backyard they make seems to be a lot like this OG Pit 40, more of a grill with the variable heights for charcoal rather than a pure smoker grill. The ones that I wanted to feature in this episode. So I decided to leave them out. I already made an episode, though, on even smaller versions of these smoker grills, and I'll link that above. But today we're looking at the larger ones, and I think they're pretty interesting, too. And so for our features, we'll start with the cheapest and go to the most expensive, beginning with the Fat Daddy Reactor. Why is it named the Reactor? When that makes it sound like your food will be cooked by nuclear radiation? Might have to do with how the dampers kind of look like nuclear hazard symbols. At any rate, it cost $1,800 due to its thinner metal. The owner says it will still hold heat well, though. Now, the air intake on the reactor is different from any of the other pits in this episode. It has two pinwheel dampers that are located on a small door leading to a channel that goes under the smoker and opens in the middle with a 6 by 6 inch opening. The entire bottom is a wood grate above that opening. I asked whether coals or ash could clog that intake below, but the owner said that they hadn't had that as a problem. And I can see that if there's enough space between the grate and the bottom, and 6 by 6 inches is pretty good too. You can see the grate there above for the food. It's got those hot dogs on there. There's a lower position for the grate to rest on as well. Then there's a spring-loaded latch for the fire door. Nice. The exhaust dampers are there on the top. There's four of them. And you'll also see the temp gauges up top as well, which is a placement that's unique to this smoker. Overall, the Reactor is rather unique among the smoker grills that we're going to talk about today. And now we have 1904 pits. I covered the Slinger from 1904 pits on my episodes on smaller smoker grills, which is in itself a smaller version of these ones here. Here we have the Trolley 3-foot for $2,499 and the Trolley 4-foot for $3,199. And you see the fire brick and the fire grate on the bottom there in the first picture. On the back of it, we see the lid stop and the sliding exhaust damper above that. So it has those holes all the way across, gives good even flow from the whole back. There's the food grate up top. The lids have two clamps to hold that lid down. The fire doors there have sliding intake dampers. It also has a clear coat finish. Here we have the 1904 Pits accessories, a stainless steel griddle for $184.99, and a stainless steel flip grate for which larger trolley size is $289.99. And now here we have Smoke Slinger, company that I've talked about before when I first looked at chud boxes about a year ago. Since then, they've come out with the mini Smoke Slinger, which is $2,199. The original Smoke Slinger is now $2,899. It's gone up a bit since I think it was maybe $2,000 at the beginning. But yeah, and we'll see if it's still worth it. There are quite a few features to go over. They put a high temp oven seal on the lid. The top has 2 inches of insulation to keep the heat in. It has turnwheel dampers on both the fire doors as well as the tops of each side right under the lid and side handles. It has D-rings on each side as well to keep it strapped when moving. Supposedly, there is a drain on the bottom of it, but there's no pictures of that, so I couldn't really see one. On this slide, we see the coal baskets. The mini Smoke Slinger has what looks like a newer version of the coal basket, if you see it there. The mini has just one, but the full Smoke Slinger has two. Both come with enough grates to fill 2 levels. On the larger Smoke Slinger, I think the number of grates is 4, and the mini has 2. The 4 half grates for the larger one. You can see the grate levels there. And lastly, we come to baffling. The Smoke Slingers come with baffle plates. For the full-size Smoke Slinger, you can use this to make a reverse flow kind of situation happen by making the heat and smoke go the long way around the baffle plate and have the exhaust then on the other on the first side so that it travels all the way around. It also comes with heat diffusers for more indirect cooking, but plain vertical cooking instead of, roundabout. Lastly, we have a couple upgrade options. You can get a customized logo plate, like the Smoke Assassin one you see pictured there, for $299. Only for the full-size Smoke Slinger, you can get a counterweight for $250. Makes that lid a bit easier to open. And now we're at TMG Pits. I covered the dumpster in my previous episode on smaller smoker grills, but one of my viewers pointed out that it wasn't fair to compare it to the smaller ones. So I decided to classify it as more of a 3/4 size, along with the 1904 Pits 3-foot trolley and the mini Smoke Slinger, and include it again here. The dumpster is $2,999.99. The full size roll off is $4,499.99. All right, this slide you've seen before on the dumpster that I used in the other episode, but the roll off has all the same features except for one that we're going to show on another slide. The bottoms of these smoker grills are 1/4-inch double walls for great heat retention. Features a slide out lower rack below the main rack. Also, it has double intakes on the sides with expanded metal as a safeguard to keep coals from falling out right there. Has a nice pull bar and features 2 exhaust stacks. You see they're a counterweight, but the gas strut you'll see on the roll off is actually now standard on the dumpster. So they're not doing counterweights anymore, as far as I understand. Just these gas struts. I call them pistons there in the picture. They will help open that lid pretty easily as well. And here we have the roll off. Besides it being larger, it has 2 pull-out secondary racks instead of 1. That's basically the only difference. Everything else is pretty much exactly the same. And you see the gas strut on that side there too. And here we have the Gator Pits of Texas with the cube for $3,250. It is a fairly standard smoker grill in design and conception. There's the grate. It's reinforced. You see those bars there. Fairly well built, which is how Gator Pits of Texas does all their work. One of the 2 exhaust dampers has Gator Pits badging. There's the door stop you see there. It's like a really thick bar. It's got the charcoal grates for the bottom. The bottom is 2/4-inch steel sheets with insulation, actual insulation between to make it a full 2 inches down there. So, the heat's not going to be leaving out through the bottom. It's going to stay there and come up and do the cooking you want it to do. Lastly, we have the notch latch air intake system with just using the door, popularized by Bradley Robinson from Chud's Barbecue. But yeah, that's it. It's a really fairly simple but well-built version of the smoker grill. Here we have the upgrades they offer for the cube. Now, understand that Gator Pits of Texas is a full custom shop, so there are a lot of upgrades. 1/4-inch angled frame fire grates, so that's thicker fire grates for $324.95 extra. Fire poker for $59.95. Ash rake for $59.95 as well. Pro port for $49.95. Stainless pull handles for $49.95 extra. Lastly, you can add a pellet hopper with a grease pan and heat shield for $995. I have to say that seems like the worst thing to me on this whole episode. Perhaps it seems like sacrilege, or I don't know. If you want a pellet smoker, get a pellet smoker. Those are my thoughts on it. I know I usually leave my thoughts to the end, but just no. Kind of voids the whole point of having a smoker grill, in my opinion. Lastly, we have the Millscale Metalworks Hotbox for $8,850. There are 3 adjustable exhaust dampers with rain guards. Has 8-inch casters, which may be the largest casters, as we know the larger diameter the caster is compared to the axle, the better mechanical advantage you have in pushing it, rolling it. There's a brake for the lid you see there. I'm not exactly sure how that brake works, but hopefully it keeps your lid where you want it. They have 2 half racks for food on the top. It also comes with 9 round bars for holding sausages. They don't show pictures for those, which is something I hate. I hate when there's a feature that you don't actually get to see. So, at Millscale, if you watch this, put up a picture of your round bars. Now for upgrades. You can get high temp clear coat for $550. Regularly, it just comes raw, and you have to put on your oil yourself and season it. High temp black or gray paint for $615. A flipping grate, which you see there, it looks like a really nice flipping grate too, is $910. There's a stainless steel water pan, again unpictured, for $585. And lastly, you can get coal baskets for $299 each. It's got the two doors, so if you wanted two, that would be $598. You'd have one inside each door. And now it's time for charts. Here we're going to start off with price. As you can see, the Millscale is almost twice as much as the Roll Off. Several others hover around the $3,000 range. Then we have stair steps down to the Reactor at the bottom. And here we have inches squared on the Main Grate only. And one thing we noticed first is that even though the Hotbox is almost twice as much price-wise as the Roll Off, they're about the same size, just in horizontal space. The Trolley 3-foot is at the bottom. Then the mini Smoke Slinger, the Dumpster, the Cube, the Reactor, the Trolley 4-foot, the regular Smoke Slinger, and then the Roll Off and Hotbox up at the top. And here we compare price to square inches with our dollar per inches squared. The Reactor has the best dollar to inches. The Smoke Slinger next, then its smaller brother, the Mini, then the Roll Off, the Trolley 4-foot, the Trolley 3-foot, the Cube, the Dumpster, and then the Hotbox. Now here we have the addition of square inches for those pits that come with extra grates than the actual first or main level. You see the mini Smoke Slinger and Dumpster there. You may wonder how the mini Smoke Slinger has more space with 2 levels than the Dumpster had when the Dumpster had more with 1. The thing is that that secondary grate has to fit through the door. So while the mini Smoke Slinger can double its space, the Dumpster cannot because of the sides cut off a little bit of that area. Then you see that the Smoke Slinger and the Roll Off also have gained square inches. And here we see the differences in dollar per inches squared when we add that secondary level. The 2 Smoke Slingers suddenly come out best, then the Roll Off, then the Reactor, and then the Dumpster before all the rest of them. Here I have the metal thickness of the main body. Remember, though, that the Cube has a top with thinner metal, I believe it was 11 gauge, which gives a lid that's easier to open. But for the body metal thickness, the Reactor is 1/8 of an inch metal. Then we have a whole bunch with 3/16 inch. And lastly, the 1/4 inch body metal is at the top, which plays a large role in how much it weighs. And here we have the weight in pounds. Note that some of these are approximate numbers rather than exact numbers. With the thinner metal, it's no wonder that the Reactor is only 200 pounds. Then the mini Smoke Slinger, the Dumpster, the Cube, the Trolley 3-foot, the 4-foot, the Smoke Slinger, the Hotbox, and then the Roll Off. Now the dollar per pound. The Smoke Slinger comes out best, then the Trolley 3-foot, the mini Smoke Slinger, then the Trolley 4-foot, the Dumpster, the Roll Off, the Cube, the Reactor, and the Hotbox last. And here I've arranged dollar per inches squared and dollar per pound. Both, I put them on a 10-point scale. Then I averaged those two togethers. Please know that this is only for the Main Grate square inches. Both Smoke Slingers come out the best. Then the 1904 Pits, the Roll Off, the Reactor, the Dumpster, the Cube, and at the very bottom, the Hotbox. Now, when we add in the extra inches, the Smoke Slinger still comes out on top, but now the Metal Guys pits come out better than the 1904 pits. Last, we have the Reactor, the Cube, and the Hotbox. One thing that I'd like to point out here and remind you of is that the charts don't really take into account any of the features, which have their own value and don't really translate that well to charts, which is why I give my own thoughts and why you probably have your own thoughts. Usually it's one feature that really sticks out to you that is what's the deciding factor. I'll talk about some of the features here in my thoughts. Let's start with Smoke Slinger, which came out on top in value and weight and space. There's a lot to like with Smoke Slingers, and not just for the metal and grate space. The baffling makes them incredibly versatile, probably the only smoker or grill you would need if you wanted to settle for just one. They do indirect and direct. For me, though, I'm not a huge fan of charcoal baskets, especially the ones that they have. They hold all your coals together, and that's great. But I would just as soon manage my fires and coals how I wanted on a flat surface or expanded grate. It really almost feels like the Smoke Slinger puts a lot of effort into being an indirect cooker, so much so that it sort of suffers at being a direct heat cooker. The baskets on the larger model potentially make a cold spot in the 6 to 8 inches that's between them. Any juices that fall there might not vaporize, especially if you're cooking at lower temperatures, which, if you're cooking direct, it's probably not that much lower, but still, those juices might mix with alkaline ash to rust the bottom. With a 1/4 inch of steel, it's probably not a big deal. Still, not my preference. Prefer the simplicity of a smoker grill that is what it is, which describes the other contenders better than the Smoke Slinger. I wouldn't blame anyone for wanting the Smoke Slinger because of all the value that it has and the versatility. The TMG Roll Off and Dumpster, on the other hand, are unapologetically smoker grills, and they still have a lot of value. TMG puts out a slick product, which is to say that it's aesthetically pleasing to the eye. The extra grate will appeal to a lot of people, but I like it better for its ability to hold coals and do some high heat grilling and searing rather than I do for putting food on it. There are a lot of negatives for vertical cooking on a smoker grill, which goes as well for having 2 levels on the Smoke Slinger that we talked about just now. Firstly, there's the drip down from the meat above to the meat below, so that's not terribly great. Secondly, there's the fact that whatever's above is cooking now with indirect heat, and whatever is below cooks with direct heat. You can rotate, of course, but that's a pain. Having a larger main grate is always preferable to having multiple smaller vertical grates, and that rule generally directs how the most successful barbecue restaurants run, including Snow's, the most famous direct heat barbecue joint in Texas. Even though adding vertical racks would always be more cost effective than buying extra pits, barbecue restaurants that do this the best never do that. um, Now to my favorites of this episode, which maybe not have shown through before, but it's the 1904 pits. What I really like the most is the brick bottom, which won't rust and will aid heat retention. Besides that, its simplicity as a smoker grill is something I like too. That's really all. It's fairly competitively priced too. Now, the Reactor from Fat Daddy Smokers, remember, it's the cheapest per square inch and it's the most budget friendly overall. I was a little surprised that the northernmost builder was using the thinnest metal, but it's a solid and innovative design. So I can't fault it too much. Of course, it'll be less fuel and heat efficient, especially on longer cooks, and it may have more trouble in extreme cold or wind compared to some of the other pits. But for most cooks that you'll do, it'll probably do just fine. If you're in the Midwest or have a more constricted budget, the Reactor might be the pit for you. This brings us to the cube from Gator Pits, which is almost on par size-wise with the dumpster from TMG, except for TMG's extra rack, which I think would be enough to tip me in its direction, just to be able to easily throw coals on that rack and do that high heat grilling and searing. That being said, if the shipping worked out better for the cube than the dumpster, I could see someone going that direction. Lastly, the Hotbox from Millscale. It appears to be competently made, and the sausage rods are a nice touch, but ultimately it comes off as being overpriced to me. If you have extra money to throw at something like that, the Hotbox will do the job well. If I wanted a really nice flipping grate and had thousands of extra dollars lying around, I might just get that Hotbox. But in my situation, if I were really doing this and wanted something that size, I'd go with the Roll Off. And I'd make the sausage rods myself, and I'd flip my whole hogs with chicken wire, and I would think that I would be just fine, probably. Well, there you have it. Those are my thoughts. Feel free to share your thoughts and comments. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you own any of these smoker grills, please leave a review down there as well. I'll leave you with one last question that's been rolling around in my head. Is it better to insulate the top or the bottom of a smoker grill, seeing as we've seen it done both ways in this episode? I really don't know which is better, but maybe you do. So answer in the comments below. And as always, go get your smoke on, y'all.